All right, thank you everyone for joining us today. Today, the UHAN scholars will be presenting about their research, and starting us off today, it will be Karina Serrano. Whenever you're ready, Karina.
Thank you. Did you know that receiving full doses of the HPV vaccine could mitigate your chances of getting cervical cancer? My name is Karina Serrano, and I'm an undergraduate scholar in the UHAN program, a collaboration with the University of Houston and MD Anderson Cancer Center. I'm currently working with Dr. Carmack, and my research is understanding cervical cancer disparities in African American and Hispanic women. The HPV vaccination has significantly reduced overall incidence and mortality rates of cervical cancer. In Texas, Hispanic women have the highest incidence rates, and African American women have the highest mortality rates. We are trying to identify what cultural or social factors impacts one's decision of getting the vaccine at the recommended age, which is 12. Identifying these factors allows researchers to provide insight on how to address concerns through education, policy, and other promotional material. After taking a look at a study sample of minority young adult females between the ages of 19 and 26, 3 groups were created to show the comparison of vaccine adherence and cervical cancer knowledge. Results show that 54% of participants were not vaccinated and had a moderate understanding of the relation between the vaccine and cervical cancer. And only 17% of participants received the full doses. If my hypothesis is correct, the large percentage of non-vaccinated adherers show a strong connection to the lack of available resources and factors that block access to receive the HPV vaccine, which creates a large cervical cancer disparities gap for older minority women. As this project progresses, I look forward to seeing which efforts are needed to raise awareness and promote healthy behavior. Thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you so much, Karina. And at this moment, yes, Ms. Angelina.
Thank you, Karina, for that presentation, really informative. I have a question. What do you think are some of the underlying factors that may be influencing individuals to either seek the vaccine and comply with the full round of the vaccine, or maybe hindrances to that?
I think it's a large part and due to the mistrust with the medical and public health community. They may not have community outreach services that are available to them, or they may not know where to seek them. That's the main things I see. Or they have a stigma associated with the HPV vaccine and sexual actions that are kind of associated with that. That's in large part with the Hispanic community. Their mothers kind of don't want them to get the vaccine at the age, and that hinders them. So that's why we're looking at the age groups between the college years.
I'm sorry, just one follow-up question. Did you compare flu vaccinations within the same population? Did you ask them how often they got a flu shot every year? Just curious.
No, ma'am. I believe this data was taken from my mentor's partner. But thank you for the questions.
All right, would anybody else like to provide any additional feedback, or does anyone have any questions for Karina?
I'm sorry I'm late, so I missed most of it. Nice job what I did here. At the very end, in response to Angelina, you said, I think the data was taken from. It would be good to know exactly where it came from, and if you don't know, like, to track that and to be able to reference it.
Yes, thank you.
I just had one quick question. Just wanted to know what made you pick that particular topic? Why was that your choice? Any particular reason?
Yes, so when I came into the UHAN program, my mentor actually had a couple projects that she had been working on. So it was a matter of just which one I wanted to hop on. And this was the only one related to cancer, and cancer is what I wanted to research coming into the UHAN program. So that was the interest that I went into, and it was a pilot kind of project for her. So when I jumped in, I was able to just kind of start from the beginning and data collect and kind of see the disparities for my own eyes.
Okay, great. I was just curious.
Thank you.
Great job.
All right, thank you so much. So that's all for now. We can go ahead and proceed with the next scholar who is ready to present.
I can go ahead. Nova, if you don't want to go.
Oh, I don't mind, whichever order. I can go ahead. I think we both turned on our or unmuted ourselves at the same time. So my name is Nilafar Tavakoli, and I'm currently a second-year doctoral student in the counseling psychology program, health psychology track, and a graduate scholar in the UHAN program, which is a collaboration with the University of Houston and MD Anderson Cancer Center. I'm working with Dr. Correa Fernandez, and my research is focused on behavioral health disparities among ethnic minority individuals. So I've been working with her on different projects, and one of which was creating and delivering an acceptance and commitment therapy-based smoking cessation intervention for Latinx who smoke and have depression and anxiety. Through this, I've assisted with a variety of tasks from the creation to the implementation of the actual intervention, and now transitioning to analyzing the data. In addition to this, I've been a part of grant writing processes as well as publications. We've been able to publish 2 articles in my time during UHAN, one of which was related to the dual use of cigarette and e-cigarette along with alcohol use among Latinos in Houston. This data was from the Houston Health Survey. Currently, I'm leading a first authored paper examining alcohol use and anxiety in the role of mindfulness in a sample of firefighters who also serve as emergency medical providers in Houston. As these projects progress, I look forward to seeing what implications this has for the behavioral health of ethnic minorities in Houston.
All right, thank you so much, Nilafar. Okay, Angelina?
Yeah, I'm very curious in this understanding of alcohol use among Latino populations. So the data is the Houston Health Survey, or is that, okay, so that's going to be, that's,
Yes, ma'am.
it's a sampling
Public
of, yeah, looking at the frame, it's a sampling of how they did that. And so I think all the zip codes in the city are actually represented in that data set, is that correct? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And so what's the information, what's the actual question that they're asking and the response that you're analyzing?
Yeah, so we are actually interested. So the Houston Health Survey actually captures data from anyone residing in Houston who chooses to participate. But in particular, we were interested in looking at the individuals who self-identified as Hispanic or Latino. And so within that, we were looking for individuals who reported that they have ever smoked a cigarette in their lifetime, as well as ever consumed an alcoholic beverage. And so we were really interested in looking at who are these individuals and what kind of prompts dual use, in particular within e-cigarettes, and how these behavioral health disparities, when they're comorbid, along with anxiety, how they kind of manifest differently among Latinos. And in particular, this is kind of a way for her, so my research mentor, Dr. Correa Fernandez, to kind of see what the differences are in Houston versus different cities in the US. So I know she's looked at similar variables within Latinos in Miami, Latinos in Puerto Rico. And so it's kind of comparing, it's to inform, I guess, a bigger picture of where, research and clinical efforts should be exerted among this population.
And just to follow up, I don't know whether this would be helpful to you, but the National Alliance for Hispanic Health at the national level does have a network of organizations that are working in Latino, and there's also an African American. It's the Health Equity Data Alliance. I can't remember. They changed their name from the previous name, so I can't remember it. But they both have efforts that are focused nationally and do sample from some of those same. And I don't know what maybe that's where they're pulling data from, but do sample from some of those same large cities and geographic areas. So you might look at for the National Alliance for Hispanic Health, it's called Nuestras Voces. I'll put it in the chat for you. So you might look at it as well as an option just to see what they're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, that
Thank
would
you so
be really
much
helpful.
Yes,
Yeah, thank
so
you for
much.
that tip. I really appreciate it.
I don't.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I noticed you mentioned that you did help with some grant writing. What type of grants have you written for help?
Sorry, can you say that again?
I'm sorry.
I didn't.
Oh, okay. I noticed you said that you assisted with some grant writing. What particular grants did you all write for?
Yeah, we were applying for an NIH grant as well as a university-based grant to get funding for a group-based smoking cessation intervention. And we were interested in seeing whether a brief form of acceptance and commitment therapy would be feasible to deliver online. I apologize, my dog is very upset that I'm not paying attention to him.
Okay. And you said that you all wrote some articles. What were those articles?
Yeah, the articles. One of them was doing a psychometric paper on the acceptance and action questionnaire, which is the measure for the therapy intervention that we are using, acceptance and commitment therapy. And then the other publication was the article about the dual use of cigarettes and e-cigarettes and alcohol use among Latinos from the Houston Health Survey data set.
Okay, and both were published where?
The American Journal of Public Health was the Houston Health Survey data, and then the psychometric paper was published in the Journal of Contextual Behavioral Science, which is the broad journal for the contextual behavioral therapy research areas.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you for these questions. I appreciate them.
I have a quick question. How many Latinos participated in this study, and for how long you conducted this study?
So unfortunately, none of the studies were what we conducted ourselves. These are all secondary data analysis. I'm not sure of the total number of Latinos who participated in the Houston Health Survey data total, but in our sample, I think we had approximately 1,400 Latinos who endorsed smoking.
And what is the major factors that are leading Latinos to use alcohol and tobacco?
Yeah, that's actually an interesting question that you ask. And in the Houston Health Survey data, we didn't examine that in particular, but we are actually working on a new paper looking at acculturation and looking for proxies of acculturation from actually the Houston Health Survey data set, and looking at time in the US, English level proficiency, and factors like that to see which of any of those are indicators for higher smoking and alcohol use prevalence among Latinos.
Congratulations.
I'm sorry. Do you have a comparison, okay, between, because one thing is to use and another thing is to abuse? And because we working in substance abuse and treatment and mental health services, we know exactly, okay, with the target population that we serve, what is the factors that Latinos in the Houston area lead to drink more or smoke.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question was, what is the major factors that lead Latinos to use, but also if you had a comparison, because one thing is to use and another thing is to abuse.
Mhm. Yeah, so like I mentioned in the paper that we have published, we didn't compare what the difference between using and abusing is, but just generally from my own knowledge and from other research projects that I participated in, it seems that acculturation factors seem to be related to heightened smoking among more women than men in the Latino population, and then also factors such as socioeconomic status also tend to be related to smoking as well. I'm open to your observations and things that you've also learned and working with this population to kind of branch out on new ideas for future research projects. If you have any, that would be wonderful.
All right, thank you. And Linda, I don't know if maybe you had some feedback or you want to make a comment?
Oh, just a quick,
Okay, sure.
first, congratulations on the papers. That's super exciting. And I wanted to mention, and you might have already heard this, that MD Anderson has a Mexican-American cohort study. I don't know how accessible that data is, but it's a large cohort of Mexican Americans in the Houston area, and they've collected health information, including smoking and alcohol use, and I believe some mental health indicators over time. I know that it's ongoing, but I don't know, how often they follow up with people and what types of research are eligible to partner to use that data.
Yeah, that's really helpful. So you said that it's a longitudinal study that they are collecting data on. Okay. Do you know who? Do you have? You might not know, but
Cassandra Harris could probably find out for you.
Okay.
It's in the Department of Epidemiology. The original PI left MD Anderson, and I don't know who's the PI over it now.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Sure.
All right, well, thank you, everyone. And I see Gustavo has also joined us. Hello, Gustavo. All right. Okay, and I see Cassandra in the chat that she can provide the information. So awesome. Thank y'all. All right, so next up, I believe Danielle. Did you want to go up next or?
Yep.
Yes,
I
okay,
do.
perfect.
And then I do have slides, so I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Just give me one moment to set it up. All right, cool. So thanks so much. I'm here to share just a little bit about what I've been working on this past year, and I appreciate you all being here to listen about it. So just to give you a quick overview of what I'll be talking about. So starting off with my research mentor and advisor and kind of just what I've learned from her, the themes within that I had started with and then proceeded to go forward and kind of envision what I'm looking at for the future, and then naming a couple of the specific projects that I was able to work on. So here she is. This is my research mentor, same as Nilafar, Dr. Claire Fernandez. So we had worked on many projects over this year within her group, her lab, the Latino Behavioral Health Research Team. And then two things that really popped up throughout the year that I really appreciated was one, organizational skills. Super important, starting from pre-planning your ideas all the way up to data management. Organization is key, and her love of coffee. I know that's super big for her. And we share that as well. So that was just kind of cool for us to talk about. So anyways, pretty broadly speaking, I'm really interested in health and well-being, which kind of makes sense for why I'm here. And when I really think about moving forward from when I started back in kind of June, specifically within UHAN to now, I was really looking at the cancer spectrum and specifically at cancer prevention and cancer screening. So those would be the two earlier parts of the cancer continuum or cancer situation. Those were originally starting from undergraduate, my master's, and to here where I really got started, and they really seeped into what I'm doing now. One second slide. So now I'll jump into the specific projects that I looked at. So this was the first one that Dr. Correa had allowed me to jump on. She had done a study with Argentinian-based collaborators about HIV providers and tobacco cessation. So this was doing a revise and resubmit for this manuscript. And she had let me come on in and kind of reshape it for us to submit it later on. And there was a couple of things that really stood out for me within this manuscript. One was really the HIV providers' knowledge on tobacco cessation. So it's limited. They don't have the resources or the tools to implement many tobacco cessation techniques to help their population, so specifically HIV and AIDS population, and really understand this impact. So that's interesting to know, because if we have these tools, that's helpful for tobacco cessation. And we know that tobacco cessation is really helpful in increasing your well-being and quality of life. But if you don't have the providers who have the most typical daily interactions with their patients within this chronic disease population, then that tobacco cessation techniques are not going to be used, or they're not going to be used as often. So that was a really important takeaway that I got from, and that Dr. Correa had found out within her study. And at the moment, it's being translated to Spanish and will soon be submitted to a Chilean international journal. So then next, we got into the interests that I really had. So within cancer health disparity, and I did multiple presentations, and you'll kind of see this is just a little boomerang of me doing one of my recorded presentations. So similarly to what Nilüfer had said about the Health of Houston survey data, that's big, that Dr. Correa had used often. And I was able to get on in and really look at the data and see what am I interested in, the variables specifically. So within there, I picked up a couple of variables that I thought would be of interest to me and to write a paper about, and kind of be somewhat novel for a presentation and a manuscript. So that's what really got me into creating this diagram over here. So I had to do a number of small talks, and that's how I ended up doing, before doing final analysis, just overall why I was looking at the variables that I was looking at important. And let me tell you what those variables are. So I was looking at mammogram use within a women population, and I wanted to see if there was differences by race, ethnicity, age, and healthcare coverage. So before doing any final analysis, I had to do this actually quick, really small talk. So I had found that women smokers may not get yearly mammograms, and then yearly mammograms is the most conservative recommendation to get screening. So we wanted to see whether or not this was happening within 12 months. But those who do not get the yearly mammograms within 12 months, we're seeing that they get a later stage or fatal breast cancer diagnosis. So that's more likely to lead to death or just a lower quality of life. So this is a cancer health disparity that requires further attention. And with that, it brought me to the final manuscript, which I am so close to being done with, hoping to have that submitted the end of, well, not the end, sometime in May. So at first I had presented this information to two different places, the final review of it. One was the Society of Behavioral Medicine, and this was a big conference that was 2 weeks ago. And I had my poster there, as well as I presented this to the University of Houston Graduate Research Showcase. Actually just found out that I was a finalist for the Graduate Research Showcase, one of the only social scientist trainees. I was up against a bunch of natural and hard sciences engineering, so it's really cool to kind of be within that group, because they do get a lot of attention just across the board. So anyways, I had found that there was a need to really consider race and ethnicity and healthcare coverage with respect to mammogram use among current and former women smokers. And that is important, and that was important for me to really understand. I kind of had a hunch from doing the literature review. I just had to shorten my whole introduction. It was too long to be submitted to a journal. But really understanding that it goes back to that access piece, and really understanding how are people getting the coverage that they need, and who is getting the coverage that they need. And there's differences by race and ethnicity, and whether or not you're insured or not insured. So that was the key take home here. And I'm excited to really have this out in the world. somewhat when the manuscript is fully done. So this brought me to a research pilot award that I had proposed and received through the National Cancer Institute GMAP region, and GMAP stands for a really long acronym, which is Geographic Management of Cancer Health Disparities Program. And Region 3 is just specifically looking at Texas and then some other neighboring states as well. So I have two aims for this project, and I'm going to examine the adequacy of psychosocial support for adult cancer populations of color during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I'm currently looking at both currently diagnosed cancer patients and survivors of cancer within a certain time frame. And I just want to understand what is the basically surrounding the atmosphere of their psychosocial supports, and what do they need, or what do they not have access to? And really, again, going back to the idea of how to increase health and well-being, and really understand where's the need. Because we know, for example, that psychosocial support can really increase your quality of life, not necessarily longevity. There hasn't been too much within the literature showing longevity, but quality of life is really important. And really understanding how else we can assist these populations who have this disease, chronic or acute, and really just understand what more we can do. And then I have a specific interest in the impact of COVID-19, because even if we take, for example, again, psychosocial support, as we all know with social distancing, there's been a lull in not only just getting to the doctors and getting your cancer screening, but also being able to have that contact with your loved ones, with families, those kind of typical interactions. And I'm really curious to see and to have documented what the impact of COVID-19 has had on those certain angles, because we're going to need to do improvements for that then. And I believe hopefully we'll see if there's any types of significant data within here, both qualitative, slightly qualitative. So I have some open-ended questions in there, just again to get a good sense, a descriptive sense of what's going on with this population. And then I have a set of measures as well, validated measures that will be used to kind of capture some of the health and social needs of this population. So recruitment actually start next week, is set to begin next week on Monday. Super excited. And we'll see how this goes. It has a really fast turnaround. Actually, the grant ends in August 1st. So I have to get all my data collection in then. But otherwise, that is everything I have. Thank you so much for listening.
All right, thank you so much, Danielle.
Lots of exciting work. I just wanted to ask how you're recruiting.
Definitely.
How can we help you?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a couple of different avenues I'm thinking, but definitely that was one of the things, if anyone has any suggestions, comments about that. So I have Research Match, but that I want to use more as in case I can't really get into different organizations. So Dr. Gore has connected me with a couple of different she's going to connect me with a couple of different organizations, and it's all going to be recruitment. So either I come in and do kind of like a mini presentation and or provide something about the project and just overall what's going on. I would love to see if there's actually a certain presentation that wants to be done for that organization. I would love to put that type of thing together and then present it, and then present my flyer and recruitment materials. Otherwise, it will be social media based recruitment, email recruitment, and sending out my flyer on listservs, newsletters to kind of get that interest going.
Okay, social media sounds great if you're connected to support groups or survivor groups. And I mentioned to Nilufar about the Mexican American cohort study. They may still be doing email communications or newsletters to the participants. They also could kind of pull out the cancer survivors. So that might be a possibility.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Thank you. I'll have to find out who that is.
All right, does anyone have any additional comments, feedback, questions for Danielle? All right, well, thank you and great job. Thank you. All right, so next up is Stephanie Ramirez. Whenever you're ready, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. I also prepared a short presentation. Let me share my screen. Oops. Hi, everyone. Apologies for not being able to meet with you in the prior meetings. I have classes from Tuesday to Thursday, but today was a research presentation, so I got to get out early, and I'm happy to be able to present my research that I've done within the past year. So my research is focused on young women with breast cancer and examining their unmet needs and preferences for care. This has been an ongoing project since the summer, and it's only really expanded into including different populations, for example, partners, which I'll speak at the end. But for right now, I'll just cover the main results that we got from our initial study. And some brief background about me. I am a UHand undergraduate scholar. I'm a senior. I'll be graduating this year with a biology degree and a minor in public health. And my UHand research mentor is Dr. Chiara Quadi from the Graduate College of Social Work. And her main concerns are, again, in addressing cancer care, particularly for young women and couples. So some brief background into my project, and just to kind of get started into talking about young women with breast cancer, because it's such a unique population, is young women with breast cancer actually represent approximately a fourth or 25% of newly diagnosed cancer cases in the US. And within young women, breast cancer is also the leading cause of cancer-related mortality among female AYAs, ages 15 to 39. Young women experience elevated levels of physical and psychosocial distress compared to older patients and their age-matched peers. And again, this might be due primarily due to the unique circumstances that young women with breast cancer find themselves in, balancing both work, employment, family life, financial difficulties on top of the cancer diagnosis. And then as well as managing cancer symptoms. And then furthermore, psychosocial distress in young women with breast cancer has been found to affect multiple quality of life domains for young women and may persist throughout cancer care continuum. It's also been found to persist up to 5 to 10 years post-survivorship. As of right now, current interventions are not addressing enough of the unique needs of young women with breast cancers. Most programs are targeted to older women, as well as healthcare screening is targeted to older women. So really, this is a vulnerable population that hasn't been looked at enough. And so our goal with this project is really to kind of examine what unmet needs young women have, and perhaps those results allow to inform new forms of psychosocial care. So again, our study goal is to examine the unmet needs, service needs among young women with breast cancer recently diagnosed as well. So a lot of studies also focused on post-survivorship or during treatment, but we wanted to also focus within 1 year of diagnosis. And what we gathered with unmet service needs is we'll be addressing not only informational, emotional, and practical support needs. Our sample consisted of 83 women that were recently diagnosed between ages of 18 to 45. Again, this extends a little bit beyond AYA, which is 18 to 39 years old. And within this study, they completed a felt need survey and service utilization, as well as preferences for care. So here are some of the results. This is the top informational, emotional, and practical unmet needs of young women with breast cancer that we noticed. And I just want to talk a little bit about each section. So in informational needs, we noticed that there was the top needs were mostly related to physical and diet and nutritional needs, around 40 to 30%. And this may be due to, again, a lot of physical symptom management and distress caused by treatment or by the diagnosis itself. And then moving on, we actually noticed that there was an increase above 30% for emotional and practical needs. They were more highly reported than informational. I'm only including 2 here, but emotional needs, a higher percentage were above 1/3. So in emotional needs, young women reported the need for age-appropriate program content for themselves, counseling for sexuality and intimacy, family counseling, increased relationship programs with peers. And then in practical needs, they wanted help with health insurance, disability, and social security. They also wanted help in managing work and school, financial concerns, and alternative healthcare. And as we see with the larger needs, with the larger percentages being around emotional needs, there really is a gap in care in psychosocial needs, especially around that within 1 year of diagnosis, especially as women are undergoing treatment. A lot of it can be focused on perhaps symptom management rather than the actual psychosocial or emotional needs that women might have, of course, going through a sudden shift in their daily lives, as well as practical needs. Again, a sudden shift in your life is now, do I have transportation to get to my cancer center or to treatment? Am I able to afford treatment? Do I have this insurance? How will I balance my home life with this newfound diagnosis? And so again, we see this sort of kind of upward trend for emotional and practical needs among young women. And so in conclusion to our study, what we noticed again was that young women reported needs for each service category. However, emotional and practical needs were the highest. And what's not included in this PowerPoint is their preferences for care. But what I can say about it is that young women did report preferences for care for both the option of informational web-based programs as well as age-matched supportive interventions. And they had decreased need for certain informational tools such as video resources. They rather preferred more online, mobile, and web-based programs. And I think that speaks to the target age that we're discussing, which is young women. Again, a lot of them know about internet-based resources and mobile apps. So they might want something more at a distance or that they can access within their own homes, but they also require supportive programs such as talking with a social worker or even other peer-to-peer support programs. And so implications for future programs or interventions is that, again, as we've seen in the study, is that psychosocial distress is present early on in a young woman's diagnosis with breast cancer, and they may benefit from early on intervention. And in terms of, and we do want to place an emphasis on addressing the emotional and practical needs of young women with breast cancer, particularly because quality of life domains are affected that early on. And for future directions, as I've said before, the study also collected data on partners of young women with breast cancer. So moving forward, and what I have been working on since with my mentor is examining the unmet needs between patients and partners as a couple. Further background on this is couples tend to influence each other's distress is something that we found. So we kind of want to see how that influences the reported needs. And that was my presentation. Let me stop sharing so I can see all of you guys again. Do you guys have any questions? Yes, Angelina?
Again, thank you for that presentation. All the presentations have really been very informative, and great job, everyone. So I think it was really important that you pulled out in the implications about the age and also the time after diagnosis when people are really struggling with some of the challenges. And I think you're correct. That's when the healthcare system tends to be very focused on kind of the nuts and bolts of treatment, while the patient often is dealing with the diagnosis and coming to grips with that, and how that's actually affecting their life. So I think that's really important. Were you able to do any comparisons of looking at perhaps an older cancer patient to see if those needs change within those two cohorts of age? Because, you know, you're focusing on young women. And then also in future studies, would you be looking at perhaps different points in time? So probably just after diagnosis and then maybe after final treatment or final initial treatment, just depending on, and then, you know, you could segment a little bit more, but just a curiosity, because, and I'll tell you why I'm interested, so you can just answer one question at a time. Having worked with patient navigators, particularly in cancer, one of the things that we heard repeatedly was that the benefit that navigators brought to the table, not only were they able to be available when maybe some of the other healthcare workers were not available, but a lot of times people had to wrap their head around the initial diagnosis, and having someone just there to listen and kind of help them troubleshoot and understand what they're going to be facing and how they're going to. So it's not necessarily knowledge deficit around the nuts and bolts of the treatment, but really, how does this change my life and what do I need to do next? So I think, you know, also looking at what interventions might follow, given that we have now this data that shows these unmet needs. Thank you.
So while our study didn't compare between young women and older patients, just based on like literature review that I have done before and previous studies that I have also discussed with my mentor, what we have seen is that there is a trend within 1 year of diagnosis where older women require much more, they require much more help in physical symptom management rather than psychosocial, whereas young women place psychosocial as more important. And then I forgot, can you repeat your follow-up question to?
In terms of moving forward, would you do it then in different points of time? And then the last question is, what would be potential interventions that you see?
So in future points of time, actually one study noted the shift between older and younger patients where, again, following forward maybe like 5 to 10 years in time, older patients then started to maybe want to address the psychosocial needs, while then younger patients focused on symptom management. And then, so yeah, moving forward, actually my mentor did do where she studied this, but she studied this with not between older and younger, but she studied this between couples, older and younger couples throughout the continuum of care. And she did notice a trend where older couples experience less psychosocial distress just because there tended to be more support among older, again, they had been married longer, they know each other longer rather than young couples. So that's something that we're more looking towards, we're shifting towards more like looking at the dyadic portion of it between couples rather than comparing older and younger, but that is something that has been, is a topic of interest for me.
Thank you.
Great presentation. I just wanted to ask, because I don't think I heard it, but I'm not sure. What are your plans after you graduate?
Oh yeah, I apologize because I haven't been able to attend these meetings. Initially, I did plan to attend graduate school right away. However, I have actually been in the job market and I have started to interview for positions as health educator and community health worker. I actually just recently had one with Harris County Public Health, so thumbs up. So hopefully, and that's just because coming in from like a very biology background, I really feel like I need to build a little bit more in public health to decide like what concentration I would like to pursue, because I have so many interests and it's kind of hard to pick a certain one for me. I've jumped from like studying astrobiology to like public health. So for me, it's like I really want to make sure that I pick a correct concentration.
No, and it'll be good to have some work experience. Great, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, okay. Does anyone else have any questions, comments, feedback? All right, so scholars, you guys did an amazing job. I think we can all say we really enjoyed it and we learned so much and we're all very proud of y'all, and congratulations everyone. So I just say thank you, and thank you again to the mentors for attending today and providing your feedback and commentary as well. I know that's very helpful for the scholars. So